It's quite mad to think about it when you consider all of the, air quotes, enhanced editions of Star Wars that exist in our current film libraries. But yes, believe it or not, George Lucas did actually hate some of the scenes that he filmed during his time atop Lightsaber Mountain. Why he didn't just re-edit and re-release another version of these films is anyone's guess, but still, there do exist moments that are now owned by the House of Mouse that George Lucas wasn't too happy with. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 Star Wars scenes George Lucas hated. Number 10. Killing off Darth Maul. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Did George Lucas regret killing off Darth Maul at the time? No, not at all. In hindsight, though, the filmmaker clearly had some major regrets to the decision. Of course, Maul was sliced in half by Obi-Wan Kenobi at the climax of The Phantom Menace. Despite being the greatest part of Episode 1, this Sith was now off the chessboard as the franchise moved forward. In the years since The Phantom Menace's 1999 release, though, Maul has famously risen from the dead, with him first resurfacing in the Clone Wars in 2008. And why was he brought back from his apparent grave? Well, it's because George Lucas realized what a great character he was and wanted him back in the game. As the Clone Wars co-creator Dave Filoni explained in the Star Wars Age of the Republic Villains book, Lucas told him that he wanted Darth Maul to be part of this animated series. When Filoni asked how Maul survived the slice and dice attack of Kenobi, George Lucas just told him to figure it out. From there, Maul would make his return at the end of the Clone Wars third season. Going even further, Lucas wanted to position Darth Maul as the main villain of his planned movie sequel trilogy. That was before The Beard sold Lucasfilm to Disney though, and thus plans clearly significantly changed by the time that episodes 7, 8 and 9 hit the silver screen. Number 9. Yub Nub No More. Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. For those whose first experience of Star Wars came with the original cuts of the Holy Trilogy, one of the most baffling changes later made by George Lucas was the removal of Return of the Jedi's Yub Nub song. The tune played as the Ewoks and our heroes celebrated on Endor following the destruction of the second Death Star at Jedi's close. Sure, it was a little cheesy to hear this little ditty as the Ewoks played drums with stormtrooper helmets, but it was full of the charm that had Return of the Jedi appealing to so many. To George Lucas, though, this was a scene that he wasn't happy with by the time that he came to tweak those initial 3 Star Wars pictures in 1997. Deciding that this scene didn't give a sense of galaxy-wide grandeur that Lucas now wanted, he replaced Yub Nub with a victory score composed by the legendary John Williams. It wasn't just the song that changed, though, for the entire final minute or 2 of Return of the Jedi also changed. As this new song played out, the action took in celebrations on planets such as Coruscant, Naboo, Tatooine, and Bespin. As some have pointed out, this change made kind of zero sense. The original Yub Nub celebration was one moment of victory in the larger battle of stopping the Empire. Death Star 2 had fallen, but the Empire still existed and still had plenty of numbers. So to see the entire galaxy celebrating at the end of 97's special edition of Episode 6 really doesn't work. Number 8. Who Shot First? Episode 4, A New Hope. While he may not have had quite as much stock as Boba Fett, when it came to cult characters of the first set of Star Wars pictures, Greedo most certainly had his fair share of fans. This bounty hunter was only on our screen for a matter of minutes in the opening act of A New Hope, but Greedo clearly made quite an impression as he butted heads with Han Solo in Mos Eisley. And by butting heads, this means taking a shot at Han. Or did Han shoot first? Or was it really Greedo getting off that first shot? This is one of the great questions of the entire Star Wars franchise, and it's a topic that has often split the series' fan base into some extremely passionate ways across the decades. For George Lucas, though, he clearly wasn't happy with the scene that ended up costing Greedo his life. In the 1977 theatrical cut of the movie, it's Han who shoots first and kills Greedo after the bounty hunter talks up how much he's looking forward to killing Solo. But by the time of the 1997 special editions, George Lucas had changed this so that Greedo takes the shot first. Han avoids it and swiftly fires back. Once the 2004 DVD release of the Holy Trilogy came along, George had again changed things so that the pair shoot their blasters at nearly the exact same moment. Number 7. Luke finally sees his father. Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. The finale of Return of the Jedi famously saw Darth Vader step in and put a halt to the Emperor's assault on Luke Skywalker, with Vader throwing his master to his apparent doom. In the aftermath of this, the wounded, dying Vader asked Luke to remove his helmet so that he can look upon his son with his own eyes. Here, franchise fans got their first glimpse of the real Anakin Skywalker, the man behind the mask and machine-addled outfit. Why did George Lucas have such an issue with this scene, though? Well, it was down to the eyebrows of the original Anakin actor Sebastian Sebastian Shaw. By the time Lucas came to release the DVD versions of the Holy Trilogy in 2004, the filmmaker was eager to tidy up Shaw's eyebrows. Thus, the bushy, prominent eyebrows seen in the initial 1983 release of Return of the Jedi were nowhere to be seen. In fact, this version of Jedi left Annie with absolutely no eyebrows whatsoever. In fairness, this would actually make a whole lot of sense once audiences got to see Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith in 2005, for the drastic burns to Skywalker's body would have made it impossible for his brows to have grown back again after he was decimated on Mustafar. Number 6. The Force Ghosts. Episode 6 Return of the Jedi. Not content with removing the eyebrows of Sebastian Shaw's Anakin Skywalker at the end of Return of the Jedi, George Lucas ultimately ended up removing Shaw entirely from one of the film's key shots. Said shot was the Force ghost of Anakin joining the spirits of Obi-Wan and Yoda, taking up his rightful place alongside his fellow Jedi Masters after righting his previous wrongs. Here, the original version of Episode 6 had Shaw alongside Sir Alec Guinness and the Frank Oz-controlled Yoda. This scene actually managed to remain intact throughout Lucas's 1997 special editions, but it was with the 2004 DVD release of the Holy Trilogy that saw George decide that he was no longer happy with this scene. Thus, Sebastian Shaw was out and Hayden Christensen was in. Number 5. The first appearance of Jabba. Episode 4 A New Hope. Much like some of the other scenes featured on this list, the first appearance of Jabba the Hutt is one that George Lucas was forever frustrated with, well, until he was finally able to edit the scene accordingly decades later. Played by Declan Mulholland, this first appearance of Jabba was filmed for A New Hope and had the character initially as a fur coat-wearing human. Lucas intended to replace Mulholland with a stop-motion character in post-production, but budget issues meant that that wasn't possible. Unhappy with what he was left with, George cut the scene entirely. With budget not being an issue at the same time in 1997, Lucas reinserted this scene and replaced Mulholland with a CGI Jabba the Hutt in the visage that we'd come to know him today. This do-over itself was replaced in 2004 with a far superior CGI model of Jabba that was inserted for the DVD release of the original Star Wars films. Even then, Lucas noted on the commentary track for the 2004 version of A New Hope how he'd still debated cutting the scene out of the movie once more. Number 4. The Phantom Menace's finale. Episode 1 The Phantom Menace. Taking shots at the Phantom Menace is pretty low-hanging fruit these days, with many quick to forever lambast the clear flaws in that movie and the impact that it had on ruining their childhoods. While there are a handful of bright spots in Episode 1, George Lucas himself clearly had some issues with the final moments of the picture. As shown in the excellent The Beginning, Making of Star Wars Episode 1 documentary, a first watch of the initial cut of The Phantom Menace had Lucas questioning whether or not he'd done too much too quickly in the moments after the death of Qui-Gon Jinn. As pointed out by editor Ben Burt at the time, Episode 1 shifts way too frantically from mourning the loss of a hero to the big escape sequence to comedy with Jar Jar Binks to the return of a young Anakin Skywalker. It's absolutely fascinating to watch this documentary footage of George Lucas almost wincing his way through this sequence, realizing that he may have actually fucked up the grand return of cinema's greatest franchise. How much of The Phantom Menace's finale was ultimately changed after this, we'll never know for sure. Either way, it was clear that George Lucas wasn't at all happy with what he'd initially put together for the film's final few minutes. Number 3. The Whole of The Force Awakens. Episode 7 The Force Awakens. Now, this isn't a scene and definitely not one of his Star Wars movies, but George Lucas was not at all impressed by J.J. Abrams' Episode 7 The Force Awakens. As detailed by the former Disney CEO in his The Ride of a Lifetime book, Lucas didn't even attempt to hide his disappointment after Kathleen Kennedy screened The Force Awakens for him ahead of the film's 2015 release. Of course, this was the first Star Wars picture to be released following the House of Mouse's purchase of Lucasfilms 3 years prior. As such, Lucasfilm President Kennedy wanted to get George's thoughts on this new venture to a galaxy far, far away. Unhappy at what he'd just watched, Lucas bluntly told Kennedy how there's nothing new in Episode 7, lambasting it for being a carbon copy of his original 1977 Star Wars movie, and explaining how he always viewed each new film as a way to introduce new worlds, new characters, and bring something fresh to the table. Not just that, but George slammed The Force Awakens for not having enough visual or technical leaps forward in what the finished product brought to the screen. Number 2. Stopping the Star Destroyer, The Force Unleashed. Not a scene from any Star Wars movies, but this entry instead revolves around a scene in 2008's incredibly fun The Force Unleashed video game. Now, George Lucas had given his blessing for the story of this game, with players taking control of Darth Vader's apprentice as he ponders the morality of his role and the responsibilities given, yet wasn't exactly enthused with the end results. While gamers ate up the intricate storytelling, the use of familiar faces, and the ability to do all sorts of crazy stuff with the Force, George was not so impressed. In particular, one moment that really irked the beard was the sequence where Starkiller uses his Force powers to bring down a giant Star Destroyer. As a video game scene, it was pretty damn badass to witness one person wield so much sheer power, but Lucas did not agree. To George, this was seen as way too over the top, even for a game in which he encouraged the creators to do what they saw fit. After all, the legendary filmmaker has never been shy about commenting on how he sees everything other than his movies and the Clone Wars as being its own separate world and canon. As Lucasfilm's Pablo Hidalgo has detailed in since-deleted tweets, Lucas himself wasn't as directly involved in The Force Unleashed as some fans originally thought, and the Star Destroyer scene in particular wasn't to his liking. And number 1, The Kissing Siblings. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. This is partly educated guesswork here, but one has to think that George Lucas really isn't keen on the scene where Luke and Leia share a kiss in The Empire Strikes Back. Of course, Return of the Jedi would reveal that Luke and Leia are actually siblings. Not just siblings, mind, but the two would actually be twins. Neither character was aware of this at the time of the Empire's smooch, and likewise, neither was Lucas. As detailed in Star Wars The Annotated Screenplays, the original plan was very, very different, especially when it came to these Skywalker siblings. Originally, Lucas had zero plans to have Luke and Leia be brother and sister, and instead the pair were intended to be two parts of a love triangle involving Han Solo. When Yoda spouts "there is another" in The Empire Strikes Back, that was a reference to Luke's sister, but the sister was not going to be Leia and was going to be a character who Lucas intended to introduce in his planned sequel trilogy. It was only when he got to Return of the Jedi that George decided to combine Leia and this mystery sister together. In hindsight, surely George Lucas must look back on the Empire's big kiss scene and just slap his head in regret, right? After all, incest, even in a galaxy far, far away, definitely isn't cool. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 Star Wars scenes George Lucas hated. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice, where I do all of my streaming outside of work, and it'd be great to see you over there, my friends. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself with love and respect, my friend, because you deserve all of the best things in life, and do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise, alright? You're a massive ledge. Now go out there and absolutely smash it today. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.